So this is our fourth and final video in the series on uploading large datasets to MapBox Studio. So we're going to show you in this last stage, hopefully you've followed us through so far, you've installed all the software, you've imported all your data and kind of started to set up the layers in MapBox Studio's kind of dataset editor. So now we're going to show you how to actually start styling that information using MapBox Studio, and specifically using a language called CartoCSS, which MapBox Studio have helped really come on over the last couple of years to be a fully fledged map styling language. So if you remember from the first few videos, what we were uploading is some data from the Ordnance Survey in the UK called OS OpenMap. And so what we're going to show you now is to start styling this ready for actual usage on your website. You can see here actually we've got the page open for a style that we've already created at Earthware for the OS OpenMap data. And so we're going to show you some of the basics of creating a style like this. We're not going to go through to the detail and level that you can see in this style here. But if you want to go and have a look at this style after this tutorial and play around with it yourself, it's on Bitbucket. Here you can see the address here. You can just go and open that up and see the actual CartoCSS and copy and paste that into your own version of MapBox Studio, ready to try out for yourself. So we're going to take some of the basics ones here, maybe get some of the buildings and the roads styled up in MapBox Studio. So here we are in MapBox Studio. At the end of the last tutorial we've just got kind of two of these layers added in, and we've now gone and added all the layers in for all the different shape files that we imported into Postgres, all the different tables we've got. We've got them kind of ordered in the way that we know we're going to want things to be on top of each other, so we've got buildings near the top and roads further down, less important things, and things like woodlands and things. This kind of woodland and tidal water would be kind of right at the back of your styles. So the order in which you put them here in your data is going to make it easier for you to style later on. You'll see that. So what we've done, we've added all these different layers in here. You can see for all the different ones, if we go into this SQL tab up here, we've got different zoom levels for different information. So as we zoom the map in and out, you'll see obviously at this zoom level we can see all the building outlines, we can see all the roads, we can see lots of information, but as we zoom out you'll see less and less information being visible. There, our buildings have gone, minor roads have gone. So we've got the data adapting to the zoom levels. That will do a number of things. One, it means when you actually upload this data to MapBox Studio, you'll stay under the limit per tile in terms of the data that we talked about last time, but also it's much more performant because we're not having to go and get all that information at every single zoom level when you wouldn't want to display it anyway. So really we're starting kind of the styling here by turning on and off data at the different zoom levels. So the easiest way to start styling this is we need to create a new style project for this data source. And there's a quick way to do this. If you go into settings here, there's actually a create style from source. If you click on this, local source is what we want because we're still working locally from the Postgres database. And you'll see it's created a new kind of standard basic style. It's gone through every single style layer we've got in here and just added in a basic style for it. You can see obviously at the moment it's not particularly very pretty. So we can go through a few things here. We can look at settings. You could name the style here and give it a different name, so OS OpenMap. A description. Obviously you need to attribute the style to the Ordnance Survey in this case, but to whoever else you need to attribute it to. You can have maximum and minimum zoom levels, so if your style should only actually go in so far and come out so far in terms of zoom levels, you can tweak that there. You can tweak the format, so depending on how compressed you kind of want the image to be, and if you've got a low number of colours then you could probably reduce the PNG colours, so I'm just going to leave it for the moment on 256. So you could tweak those all quite a lot. I'm going to leave them alone for now. And if you go into the layers tab, what we now have here is a layer for each of the data layers that we had in our project, and you can see they've all got the same names, but you can see in front of all of them they've got a hash. Actually that refers to the class names here, as you can see. If you've ever done any CSS, any cascading style sheets on web pages, or even better if you've done any less, which is a kind of super version of CSS, then CartoCSS is actually branched from less. A lot of the clever things you can do in less you can do in CartoCSS. And so what you can see here is at the top here we've got map, which is kind of our body of the page, and we can choose a background color for that. If you click on this little color picker here, you can choose whatever you like. So if we want to have a red color, and as soon as I click save, and we'll save it somewhere, doesn't really matter for now. You'll see it's changed the map background to red, and now as it's already saved, if I just change it back to white, I can either use the color picker or type in the hex code, so FF, or 3 Fs for short, and you can see it changes back there. So for each one of these layers we can create one of these classes in CartoCSS, and then we can tell it all the different formats and colors and line thicknesses and all kinds of different things we want. And there are a few tricks that you can do in CartoCSS beyond just the kind of colors and stuff. So you can start to do some quite clever things like zoom level styling, so that things do have a different style at different zoom levels. So we'll show you some of that in a moment as well. All of this requires a bit of knowledge and a bit of playing around, especially if you've never used anything like CSS before. But there's actually quite a good documentation built in here on the left hand side. It will show you all the properties that you can have for things. It will show you all kinds of information about how to use each one in here. So we're going to go through and do some basic styles on some of the ones here, just so you can kind of get a feel for how it works. So we're going to start by using some variables. These are a thing that comes from less as well, and you define a variable by putting an @ symbol in front. So if we want to use the same color for lots of different things, in this case we're going to use water, we can create a new variable and call it @ whatever we want, in this case water, and we can give it a color that we would like our water to be. So I'd like my water to be this color, and then wherever we want to use that color, we can use it again and again in different places. So we can introduce different ones, for example woodland. Woodland can be this kind of colour. We can introduce one for buildings and building outlines. Now whenever we refer to any of our styles below, we can use these colours again and again. So if we want, for example, tidal water down here, let's make tidal water be filled with our colour. So we're going to get rid of the line colours because we don't really want line colour. And we're going to write a class which you can find in here, a property which you can find in here called polygon fill. Here it is. If you scroll down a bit further, under the polygons heading, polygon fill, and you just do polygon hyphen fill and the colour you want. So we're going to use our variable. So you can see down here now in Southampton where this one is, we've now got our tidal water filled in the watercolour. Now obviously we can do that with surface water, we can do it with all kinds of different things. Okay, so you can see even here where we've got the styles that it applied by default, we can already start to see that it is a map, and we can see what's going on here. Now we're not seeing the buildings until we zoom in, because don't forget our data source isn't loading buildings until they get a lot further in. So let's have a look at buildings and go and style some of those. So in here there already should be, there's important buildings we'll come back to in a moment, they're like hospitals and things, but there should already be one for buildings. Here we are. So we're going to use polygon fill again. And we're going to go back to the top and get our building fill, which is this one. And click save. I'm just using Control S to save, but you can just click on save there. And you can see there we are, we've filled in our buildings, but we wanted to use a different outline colour than the horrible green it's chosen there, so let's go and fill in a different colour. You can see here, rather than using the hex colours that I'm using, the 6-digit hexadecimal numbers, you can actually use RGB alpha. So if you're used to using something like Photoshop, you can go and look these values up and put them in like that. I tend to stick with hex colours personally. There we go, the buildings are starting to look a little bit more sensible there. But again, I'm not actually styling differently depending on zoom level yet. They're only disappearing because the data doesn't contain them at this level. So let's try and do a zoom style, because we don't really want these strong building outlines to be shown unless we're zoomed in at a particular level. So what we can do is put a kind of sub filter in. So we're going to say when the zoom level is above, and we're currently on 16, you can see here. So let's say when it's above 16. So if it's more than this, then we want these line styles to apply. And you put these curly brackets in, then anything we put inside these curly brackets will only apply when the zoom level of the map is at this level. I'm just going to indent things to make it read a little easier. So if I save that, we're now at zoom level 16, we've got no outlines. The moment we hit zoom level 17, on come our outlines. So it's really simple to do. Really doesn't take a lot of messing around or anything to be able to style at different zoom levels. And you can do all kinds of things, change colours, change opacity, all kinds of different things. So let's just show you an opacity change as well. So when zoom level is less than 16, we're going to change the opacity of the polygon, so it would be semi see-through. So let's say 0.5. So here it's always going to be 0.5 because I have only put it outside the zoom level, but we're going to make it more solid when we zoom in. So as long as we're above zoom level 16, we want it to be 1. So opaque, not opaque. Okay, so that shows you some basics. Most things when you're styling are pretty much that. They're bringing in the right colours and the lines and the styles and thicknesses of line. I mean, we can show you line width as well if we try that. So when the zoom level is above 16, that's really thick buildings like that we are. So you can tweak it, and you can see it's really interactive. I can zoom in and out, I can see how it works in real time as I'm playing around. And most things are as simple as that. Roads and labels start to get a little bit more complicated, so we'll show you a basic road and some of the kind of clever styles that are built in that aren't quite so obvious on how to do roads next. So if we go and find the road class, here we are, here's road. Now roads come in lots of different categories. So if we go into the roads here, if you open up the layer that's effectively the data layer, you can see there are different types of classification or different kinds of road number, and we can use those to style motorways differently than roads. We might get to that in a moment, but we're just going to show you the basic how to style a road and how to do outlines and fills on there. So this has two special kind of classes that we can do, one called case and one called fill. So case is the outline, and then fill is unsurprisingly the fill. But much as it's the outline, what we're really doing here is layering two things on top of each other. So we're actually going to give this quite a bigger line width. And although fill is going to represent our fill, what it really is laying two lines on top of each other. So the fill is going to be less than the line width. And we've got a line colour there, but we're going to put some fill colours in a second. So if we put a line fill in here, and let's do it kind of semi-off. Kind of creamy colour hopefully, and we'll do the case I'll do it black for now. As you can see, when I get an error in my CartoCSS, it's telling me I've got an error and I've missed out a colon. Right, So there we have roads being rendered, and you can see it doesn't matter what zoom level I'm at, they're always being rendered in the same way. So we've got the white here, although it's semi-transparent, which I don't want it to be. This last one, alpha, is the transparency. I want it to be nice and thick, that's better. So you can see it doesn't matter what zoom level I'm at, it's the same thickness, and as I zoom out it then starts to overlap the buildings. So this is where you end up having to do quite a lot of tweaking on roads to do different sizes of road or different thicknesses of roads at different levels as you kind of zoom in and out. And so that takes quite a lot of time, which I'm not going to go through now, but you could see how you could do it with the zoom levels we had before, changing the thickness at each step as I zoom out. And what we're going to do here is show you that the ends of these roads are obviously very squared off at the moment. We can round them with these properties here. So we've got line cap round and line join round, and you'll see what they do in a second when I save. So you can very faintly at the end here, if I zoom in a bit, so that's when you can see the line fill has now rounded off, and if we put that here as well, now they're rounded off as well. So cap is the end, fill is the kind of the join is where the lines are joining together, so we've got nice smooth kind of streets here now. Now previously when I talked about loading up the data layers in the previous tutorial, we talked about that having the problem with sometimes when you're styling that you can't do all the styles in one go, and sometimes you need to repeat a layer, which is a bit annoying because you end up with twice the data. So I'm hoping in time, as they have managed to over the last few years, that CartoCSS and MapBox Studio will evolve a bit further to not need these. But you can see we've just styled road, but we've also got road labels here, which is actually what this thin line down the middle here is. So we can't do the labels from the road one as well, because otherwise all this fill that we've done starts rendering over the top of it, and it makes it very awkward to do. So we actually have to do our labels on road labels here. So if we go and find road labels in the left hand side, you can see it's down here. If I take out the styles that are in here, you'll see that annoying little lines will disappear, and now we're going to start to put in a font and where to get the labels from in the data. So here we need a lot of what are the text properties. So we're first going to tell it what text font we want, and so I'm going to put another couple of variables at the top here that we're going to reuse. So variables don't only have to be colors, they can also be font names. So we've now put in a font regular variable, which we're using Arial, regular, a font bold, which we're using Arial Unicode bold, and a text grey colour. So if I save those, we'll show them in a moment. You notice there's a fonts button over here. This will show you all the fonts that are currently installed on this machine that I can actually then use. Not necessarily every single font. In fact, I think a lot of these come with CartoCSS, with MapBox Studio, but you can choose these, and you can actually add your own web fonts in if you've got those as well. So we've got those in there. We're now going to tell it to use those in our text for our road labels. Here we are. So I'm going to tell it to use the font we had above, so text face name is our bold font. We're going to give it a size. And we're going to give it a fill colour, which is our grey that we put above. That one there. So that's all well and good, but at the moment it's not actually going to find any text to write for our label, so we have to go and find what the text property of the layer is. So you see in road labels we have all these different properties here, and we need to use dist name here, which is the string that's actually the name in the data, and that's what we're going to use for it. So what we do here is it's the text name property. It tells it where to get it from in your data, And you need to pay attention to the format here. So we open quotes, put it in square brackets, write dist name, close the square bracket, close the quotes, and finish with a semicolon like every line has. So we now have labels, but as you can see, they're a bit of a mess. They're not really nice. There's a few things we need to do to make them look a little better. For the first one is to tell MapBox Studio how we want them to be placed, and we want them to be placed along the line. So text placement line. Yeah, we're getting there then. But now you can see Obelisk Road here has lots and lots of repeats, and so that gets very annoying, and as I go down it will get more and more. So there are lots of properties, and I'm not going to go into the depth of all of them, but if you go and look at all the text properties that are in the documents here, there's a number of them that we can use for this. So we're going to use one called min distance, which basically tells the renderer what the minimum distance between two labels has to be, and you can tweak that for your own usage. I'm going to tell it to be 300. So if you watch when I save, we got rid of some of our repeats there, and as we put that up, it should, but not always, start to do them. Didn't really seem to make any difference there, and this is where it takes quite a lot of playing around and getting to understand those more complicated properties. There's one I found that helps a little bit, which is telling it to avoid edges. It stops them getting cut off then at the end of things. So you're going to have to play with that a lot to kind of really get that tweaked well. And if you go and look at the style that we've created online, which we showed you earlier, you can see we've started to solve many of those problems with some more complicated styling rules. But there you can kind of see stuff. One important property I haven't got on here at the moment is called a halo, and that's kind of to make text more readable, especially if it's on a dark background. You can put a kind of glow around the text, so that's called text halo radius. If we turn that on, you should have just about been able to see that. If I keep it still a moment, you can see it stand out a little bit more. It puts a tiny bit of colour around the outside between that one and that one, just makes it stand out a bit. And you can change the halo fill to be whatever you want. So text halo fill, let's make it a red, and then you should hopefully be able to see it work better. There we go. I'll leave that for its default at the moment. So now you've seen how to style buildings, you've seen how to do different styles at different zoom levels, you've seen how to do the more complicated roads, and it's really then just building it up layer upon layer until you've got everything done. You can see if I zoom out here it starts to look pretty horrible, but once you've built it up it does actually start to take shape pretty quickly, and as long as you can understand the basics of how we're doing that, it's not a problem. What can be quite helpful is adding different style sheets. So this is what this whole document is called, a style sheet, and you can create them and using this button up here. So if I create one and call it labels perhaps, you can split apart your styles, making them a little bit more manageable. Anything you've got in this sheet is globally available elsewhere, so all these properties will be available. So if I take the line road labels for example, I can put those in labels along with any other kind of point of interest labels I have, and click save, and now we've got them split apart, just making them a bit more manageable. So actually if you look at our style online, if you go and have a look at the source code here, we've actually got a number of different styles here. So style files, we've got areas, labels, points of interest, roads, and the overall style file. So you can do split them out a lot. You can also use images, and you'll see in our online one we're using what are called shields, which come from the American motorway shield, but you can use them as blocks around the motorway numbers, and that starts to get a bit more fun, but you can see here we're using them on the A335 there. So hopefully that's a bit of an introduction, gives you an idea how to style these things up. Once you've got that all done and you're all happy with it, you can actually upload that style to MapBox. So if you go to settings, as soon as you've got it using a remote source, and that's where you take the data source that we had earlier, as soon as you've uploaded this to MapBox using this button here, you can change the source on the style to use that online source, and then you'll be able to upload the style as well. But basically you end up with your data and your style all hosted by MapBox, and it means you can run your own entirely styled dataset running from MapBox once you've got it all uploaded from there. But hopefully we've given you a good view of what you can do locally on your machine using Postgres, and started to show you how you can actually build up your style and get it moving. So as I said, go and have a look at our style online and learn a bit more about it, and definitely start to have a look at CartoCSS and the CSS and the docs here to give you a good idea of some of the more advanced features. Thank you for watching.